Hello and welcome to the Choralosophy podcast. This is a bite-sized back-to-school tip episode. I've never done one of these before, but I have this form on the main page at Choralosophy.com. It's an embedded Google form. So if you go to Choralosophy.com, it's right there on the front where listeners to the show can write in about a variety of things in a format that I will actually be able to keep track of. Right. So if you send me a Facebook message, it gets buried with a whole bunch of other Facebook messages. If you send me an email, same problem. So this form I put on there a few months back has been collecting a lot of different types of thoughts and comments from listeners, including listeners who would like to come on and share some thoughts with you. So as school ramps back up, I'm going to air some of these, and there'll be short episodes where listeners to the show had been listening and coming up with their own things that they'd like to add. Before we get to today's bite-sized back-to-school helper, we are going to just remind you that as school ramps back up, especially if you are in an area that has the masks coming back, that the best singer's mask on the market is the Resonant Singer's Mask from mymusicfolders.com. It's flexible, it's safe, it's fittable, washable. You can, for people who are immunocompromised and need that added N95-ish type filtration, you can add in filters. It's just a sweet high-tech mask. And you can enter Choralosophy at checkout to get a 5% discount, which if you're ordering for a large group, that really adds up. And of course, you're going to want your Sight Reading Factory memberships filled back in for all of your students, yourself, so that you can get those assessments going, you can get that daily practice going, and you can make literacy, the dream of literacy, a reality. And Sight Reading Factory, I believe, is also the best tool. I don't talk to you guys about the things that, the crappy stuff. I really talk to you about the things that make my job easier, and I believe they can make your job easier as well. So get those memberships and enter Choralosophy at checkout. Last but not least, you're going to need sheet music. And that means you're going to need to go to Graphite Publishing, where they have composers like Eric Barnum, Tim Takash, Jocelyn Hagan, Christopher Harris is got some new stuff on there. I believe you're going to see some Reginald Wright stuff on there soon. Oh, I probably better edit that out. And a variety of other awesome composers. It's just that catalog has exploded in the last year. So go over to Graphite if you haven't been there recently. And of course, you can enter Choralosophy at checkout. And then you're going to definitely hit up ryanmain.com for his independently published stuff that's just so much fun for kids to sing. They dive into it full throttle, and they come out with these great products of pieces that they just really, really love to sing. We sang 2 of Ryan's pieces last year in virtual, weird, hybrid, back and forth school, and it really added to the meaningfulness of that experience. So head over to ryanmain.com and enter Choralosophy at checkout there as well. You guys get all the hookups when you listen to this show. So good luck with your back to school preparation. Coming up next is Zach Singer. Zach is going to be sharing some thoughts and bouncing some ideas off of me about the idea of being a cultural custodian. And this is a really interesting short conversation where, as you head back into the classroom, you could give yourself a new frame of reference for how you think about and how you try to bridge some of the cultural gaps and cultural divides that are in many of our classrooms. And Zach's got a really interesting way of thinking about this and describing it. So I encourage you to stick around and listen to this, and hope you enjoy. Okay, everybody, I'm here with Zach Singer, and Zach and I are going to chat a little bit about this concept of what he calls cultural custodians. And I'll let him tell us a little bit more about that in a minute. But it's really centering around this idea that we have a responsibility when we deliver music to students to help them understand a context for the music and not just the notes and rhythms. And there's a historical context there and a cultural context that's really important. So Zach, welcome to the show.
Hi, glad to be here.
So who are you? And why are you interested in this topic?
Yeah, I am the music teacher for Vashon High School here in St. Louis, where I've been teaching now. This is my second year. And then I also host a podcast called In Time, a music history podcast, where we kind of go over a lot of these concepts that we try to do as educators, really, which is better inform ourselves so we can tell our students what not only is appropriate for a piece of music, but also what would be appropriate for understanding what we're teaching them.
Absolutely. Now, why, in your mind, like I've got my own ideas about this of why it's important, but in your words, why is this
Mhm.
important in a classroom? So it's one thing to nerd out on a podcast and listen to all kinds of little history things, but
Yeah.
why do we care about this in the classroom?
When I was in school, and like that wasn't that long ago, I always felt like all of our subject matters were kind of siloed away. Like we had our history classes, we had our science classes, we had our English classes, or whatever courses you were taking, and there weren't a whole lot of connections being made between them. My goal, my idea in talking with on the show or talking with students is always to find some other way to take whatever we're working on and show them that this comes from somewhere. Like if they're learning about the American Revolution or, the colonial era, for example, you can show them William Billings. You can say, this was the music that was going around at this point in time in this place, and it gives them a little extra color to the world that they're already learning about elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And I think that's something that as music educators, we talk about doing. In other words, we talk about it as an ideal.
Mhm.
That it's kind of obvious to us that that's something that we should do. But at the same time, doing it in practice is a whole lot of a harder thing because, like you said,
Yeah.
it's time to get ready for the concert, and we gotta learn the notes.
The idea of being a cultural custodian is essentially being someone who takes care of an aspect of culture. And for us as music educators, what we're doing is we're taking the musical aspect of whatever culture it is we're looking at, whatever piece of music we've taken, that comes from somewhere. It comes from a time, it comes from a place, and it comes from the mind of someone who took the time to sit down and write that music. Really, our job as a cultural custodian, in my view, is to ensure that the past or the era of time and place wherever a work came from is represented and done respectfully.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like a nice companion term in some ways to I did an episode recently with Janet Galvan, and she talked about bringing culture bearers into her rehearsal.
Mhm,
Not the same thing, but I like it as a companion term almost in that we as the teacher are the custodian of the culture. We aren't the bearer of the culture because it's not necessarily our own. If I'm doing some kind of Latvian piece, I'm not Latvian, and it's
mhm,
my culture,
right.
but it's my job to facilitate an environment where that culture is being taught with faith, good faith, and with respect. And then in her term was to, if you can, find a culture bearer who is from that culture, who'd be
Mhm.
willing to talk about it. All these things are ways we could enrich the environment. But I find that concept, of course, very interesting. I talk about it a lot on the show, and I appreciate you giving your perspective. And what's interesting is, as 2020 and the technology rolls around and gets more and more on demand, is that it's all the same.
Mhm.
Like they're all listening to the same music. And so what I like about our job is that we get to kind of open their eyes to this idea that there is music from times and places. How it's almost like a cliche. If kids nowadays, or kids, kids in general, they hear a song, right? And maybe it's from, I don't know, maybe it's from uh, Vivaldi, but they heard it
Mhm.
or maybe it's by Vivaldi, but maybe they heard it in a movie soundtrack. And so then suddenly, oh, it's the song from that movie.
Vashon is inner city St. Louis.
Hmm.
And so a lot of my kids have no I don't wanna say they don't have a context for a lot of the things I try to show them, but they relate to them differently than someone with, let's say, a more stable home life would. And
Oh,
I don't wanna put them down at all. Like,
hmm.
these kids are a lot of them are transient. I believe, like, 30% of our students could change schools or something like that in a month, like, or in a year's time, like, and I might be lowballing that here or even highballing. Like, it's a ridiculous amount of turnover in our school. But I'll play them a piece of music, and I'll ask them for something like, "What does this piece make you feel?" Because I found really early on just asking them you know, because these kids are all about rap. Like that, that is the one thing that they care about is rap music and rappers. But their knowledge of this music form stops in about 1997.
Hmm.
Anything before Tupac does not exist in their mind. And so I'll ask them, I'll put on like Stevie Wonder, or I'll put on, even going down their genre hole, like just Rapper's Delight. I'll ask them, what does this make you think of? What does this make you feel? And instead of getting an emotion out of them, I tend to get, oh, that's that picnic stuff. They
Hmm.
won't say stuff, but they'll put it to a situation before they put it to an emotion. And that could be, I've had conversations with like our building's administrators and the different facilitators that come in to help us out. Some of them think that it could be a lack of a word. Like maybe they don't have a concept of nostalgia, but they can remember, oh yeah, this song played at grandma's picnic last Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's a trauma response in which it's making them feel something deep enough that they're trying to sidestep it by saying, oh yeah, that's from that situation, but I'm not going to tell you what that's actually making me feel inside.
That makes complete sense. I think that
Mm,
is that seems like it would be a solid psychological analysis of what's going on. And what's interesting about that is, um, the bulk of my kids are white suburban kids, and I would say
mhm.
that a lot of them listen to that same music that your kids do.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my point. Now, to your point, it's definitely true that your kids will consider that music in a very different context uh,
Mhm.
than kids that have a different socioeconomic background, that have a different home life, as you said. But yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think what's interesting though is in the common denominator, as I see it, in those two
Mhm.
situations, is that we have groups of kids that don't have a frame of reference for for music that is beyond what's in their playlists.
About 5 or 6 years ago, I learned, or I slowly just realized how ignorant I was to a lot of things, in which there'd be like some kind of reference somewhere. And I'd think that's referencing something, but I don't know what's going on. And the further back you go in music and art, the more common it gets. Like if you don't come from a religious family, for example, the title of like let's say The Grapes of Wrath is going to go over your head entirely. Crud, that's just escaping me now.
Is it a
Battle Hymn of the Republic.
Oh, yeah,
There it
yeah.
is.
Okay, yep.
It dawned on me just how many of those things went over my head. I dusted off some old textbooks. I dusted off some things that I'd bought years ago on the shelf and just started reading them. And I think that part of that is that we don't have a shared culture anymore. We don't have a shared experience where you go home, there are 3 TV stations and PBS, or everyone is going to the same high school football games, or everyone's going to the same play that's being held downtown this weekend, or the same concerts. Like our culture has fragmented to the point in which the only thing that unifies this generation of students that I've met is what they're downloading.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because they're not even watching the same TV shows or web shows. Like if a kid's talking about, watching some guy streaming a video game, and I've got like 3 kids in class talking about them, they're all talking about something else. They're not talking about watching the same thing together.
Right. Now, yeah, no, I agree with that. I think the shared cultures are generational, and I agree with you that it's that, like I said before, it has a lot to do with what they're downloading. And the amazing thing is that kids all over the world, no matter
Mhm.
what I mean, it doesn't matter where they're from in many ways. If you look at the like Spotify and Apple Music data from around the world, they're all downloading the same stuff. Like
Mhm.
there are regional differences, of course, in a few things on the extremes, but you know, a certain and so I'm so out of current pop music that I couldn't even name anyone who's popular right now. But there are people who share they're just as popular here as they are in any other place. So that's interesting, and an interesting phenomenon that I'm sure is so new that we don't really understand the implications for that. But what's also interesting about it is that we're creating cultures, shared cultures based around social media communities as well. Like there's this idea that
Mhm.
community is no longer geographical, and this
Yeah.
is what you were kind of hinting at. You're not going to the same football games. You're not going to the same theater. You're joining with people online that share your interests, and those people could be across the globe. So we've kind of lost that geographical connection, which I think is an interesting thing. But here's what I would like you to do next, if you
Yeah.
could, and that's we've set up this background now of why this is an interesting thing for teachers to be thinking about. So what
Yeah.
I'd like you to explore, if you could, or just even share an anecdote or a story before we wrap this up, of some
Yeah.
times in your teaching experience where you've been able to break through this cultural barrier, this veil, and get kids to really understand a context, to get kids to really see music outside of their Spotify playlist.
Yeah. So this is going back a couple of years now. My first teaching job was at a small Catholic school in Springfield, Missouri. It was a K-8 or pre-K-8 building. And the day, this would have been late April, a couple of years ago, Notre Dame had just burned. And my students, all being, if not all Catholic, were in a Catholic building. And so we were a little more open to talk about what was going on there than, we are in the public school system. But I was able to show them, this is this relic here that was lost. We don't know where this one is right now. This was saved. This is fine. This thing over here is okay. But this is like, speaking as like at a religious angle, because I myself am not Catholic. So I never wanted to say anything like this is what we think. But what I told them, like, guys, this is yours. This is part of your historical, like your religious history right here. And for these people in Paris who just witnessed, probably the most famous cathedral on earth burn, this is how they reacted. And I pulled up the video that was going around at the time of, I don't even know the name of the hymn. But it was a group of people just standing outside of the cathedral as, there's still smoke in the air and they're singing together. And it was probably one of the most powerful things that I've ever seen, because these kids were, 4th through 8th grade in a choir class, and they're all just bawling when they understood, like, this is whatever it is that we're singing is an outgrowth of something else. A lot of times I think that students are hungry for that in a lot of ways, because they're given facts, they're given dates, they're given information and formulas, but we don't give them a lot of the time the reason why we're giving those things. Like, and
Yeah.
this could be a generational thing here, because like when I was going through school, No Child Left Behind was still the big push that was happening, that brilliant law there. But the only reason we were ever given for something was, oh, this is going to be on the test. And it was in the arts classes that I was taking, in the theater classes, in the choir and band classes, that we actually got to talk about, sure, this is here, but why is this happening? What is the goal? What is underlying, why did this composer set this line to go this way? Or why did Hamlet behave in the way that he did? Beyond just, oh, because it's a plot device, he's going crazy just to make everyone think that he's crazy. What is the method of his madness here? What could you do in that situation? What do you think should have happened? Like, it's that exploration that I think that kids are really missing.
Yeah,
In terms,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Now, what are your thoughts on how does that? Let me put it this way: in a
Yeah.
real world scenario, how do you work those conversations into a music classroom? I'm trying to picture it. Are you sitting down with the kids in a non-rehearsal setting and talking about these things? Or is this in the context of songs you're learning, in the context of songs you're learning about? How does that work for you?
It kind of depends. It depends on the situation, really. If, for example, you're in a block schedule and you've got an hour and a half of time every other day with kids, yeah, you can spend, an hour and a half doing nothing but rehearsing various things, and you've got your entire unit set up for the day, and you're going to go from here to here to here to here. My kids, they lose attention probably at about the 30 to 40 minute mark if I'm doing my job well. And I still have that extra hour's worth of time to fill. And so I can run something for about 5 or 10 minutes, stop and say, "Hey, why is that there? What do you think?" Or what does this song represent? Like, I can drop it in the middle of a rehearsal, or I can, stop everything and just sit down and talk to them and say, "Hey guys, so this piece here, it comes like, what do you know about, oh, I don't know, like, let's say the Reconstruction era. This is who they are. This is what they grew up believing. This is, why they write in the means that they do. What does that make you think of? Can you relate that to anybody else or yourself or whatever it is?" Like, I don't think it's something that you can really plan, honestly. Like you
I'm
can,
glad you said that. I agree.
yeah,
I think it has to be reading the room.
yeah.
Where we have to kind of be able to ride the wave of their attention, and there are some times where they just need to sit down and talk about the music. Like, you can't.
Mhm.
There's only so much notes and rhythms you can cram into their brain at one moment. So I totally agree. So on the way out, Zach, if it's okay, just tell us
Yeah.
where can we find your show? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So my show is called In Time, a music history podcast. We are currently available in a couple of different places. iTunes is going to be the easiest for most people. We're on Spotify. We are on Google Play. And then we are also available on our show's webpage, which is www.intimepod.com.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for telling us about that. Your students must be, I think, must be very lucky to have such a knowledgeable contextualizer. To you,
That's one way to phrase it.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's a skill that not everyone has, and so I'm happy for them that they get to have those conversations with you, and for you sharing your time here with us tonight.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, as always, for sticking around to the end, and I hope you enjoyed this format of bite-sized back-to-school thoughts. And because they're short and don't take me a whole lot of work to get churned out, you're going to actually get another one of these pretty darn quickly in the next few days. So when you see another bite-size, it's going to be William Bennett, who is a choir director, a high school choir director as well, and he chimed in on that Choralosophy main page form as well, with the idea of using growth mindset, Carol Dweck's psychological research, in your choir rehearsal. You might have remembered all the way back in episode 19 when I spoke about the anti-fragile choir with Eric Barnum. Carol Dweck's work came up in that as well. And so William and I have gone into that a little bit more in depth of some real practices and concepts and ideas, activities in the choir room, in the rehearsal setting, where those growth mindset ideas can come to life. So tune into that one as well. Don't forget to like, share, all of the things that content creators ask you to do. You know what to do. Leave comments, all of those. Another big push, though, for going on the Apple iTunes app and leaving a review. That helps a lot. I'm trying to get to that 100th review over there, which is lots and lots of, just bragging rights. There's no real reason other than it does trick the algorithm into showing more people the show, which is very helpful. Same thing on Facebook, right? You can also join the Patreon. Patreon.com/Choralosophy is a lifesaver. It's a lifeline for me in keeping this show going. So if you enjoy this content, try to do any of those things that you can to help out.